Morgan Wallen just announced that his third studio album, One Thing at a Time, will be dropping on March 3rd, 2023. There's only one problem. No, that's not a tour poster, that's the track list, a whopping 36 songs. If you're curious, this is the poster for his upcoming tour, but the fact there's nearly as many songs as there are shows on his 7-month international tour is pretty insane. Like many of you, I was anxiously waiting for Morgan to announce his inevitable third project. Never did I think such an announcement would disappoint me, but that's exactly what happened. Initially, when I saw him post the album cover and a date, I was thrilled, my eyes lit up. But as soon as I swiped over and saw the outlandish track list, I felt like a kid opening up a gift on Christmas only for it to be socks. Simply because this new album is shaping up to be nothing more than the latest instance of a big name project seemingly motivated by financial opportunities rather than trying to make an actual artistic statement, or more simply put, a money grab. I know that sounds harsh, and some of you are probably already on your way down to the comments to tell me that I'm just a Morgan hater who only uses the internet to throw rocks at things that shine, but before you do that, just give me a chance to explain myself, and I think you'll quickly realize just how complex this issue is, and it's not exclusive to Morgan. He just happens to be the most recent and notable example, hence becoming the catalyst for this video. Right away, before I get into the nitty-gritty, I think it's important I establish the idea my stance is rooted in, and that boils down to viewing music as an art rather than a business or a job. Naturally and understandably, I'm sure many of you are thinking, but music is a business, and for many of these artists, it is their full-time job, and I know that's where this all gets muddy and subjective. That's why this is such a complex discussion, because truthfully, music is both a business and an art form. So really it comes down to which aspect you hold above the other. Do you view music more as a business or more as an art? There's no right answer, but the answer you choose will mostly dictate your stance on this issue. These discussions around album lengths and album structures are nothing new. Going back to 2021, Morgan Wallen made some pretty big waves with his double album Dangerous, which then spawned the multi-album trend where for some reason artists were scared to release an album if it didn't have a companion or second side. Heck, in this time Eric Church dropped a triple album. Sort of. That whole situation was weird on its own. Then amidst the multi-album chaos, another trend sort of popped up in the form of short albums. If you were signed to a major label, it felt like you had two options, either a double album or a 7-song album, because God forbid you put out a solid 12-track album, because that would be boring. I actually like short albums. It was just funny how for a while there seemed to be no in-between. And even ambitious, multifaceted projects can be a great thing, but too much of anything is a bad thing, and that saying runs true for pretty much everything in this video. Then in 2022, the double album format evolved into a more conceptual structure with artists like Hardy and Luke Combs leaning into the two sides of a coin idea, and now it would appear as if the aim of the game is just to make the longest album possible. In a way, you can trace this back to Dangerous, which in its final form had 32 tracks. Then Zach Bryan came along and dropped American Heartbreak, which had 34 songs, and now Morgan is back to one-up Zach with his 36-track album One Thing at a Time. Side note, I find that title One Thing at a Time pretty ironic because that saying generally insinuates getting back to the basics and reintroducing things slowly, which is absolutely not the case here. Honestly, I'm just tired of unorthodox album structures. I'm tired of artists using their albums as a way to pettily one-up each other. And again, everything I'm about to say comes down to this idea of art versus business. But it's also the fact that I think these unusual layouts have been painfully overdone. These concepts really lose their touch when they're being done simply for the sake of trying to outdo the previous guy. It feels like artists are more focused on making a spectacle of their album rather than making the actual musical content of the album the spectacle. It seems like the actual music is the last thing artists want to use to attract attention. I'm not saying artists shouldn't market their music, and I'm not saying how you present your album isn't important. I'm just saying that it's gotten so out of hand, especially amongst the big names, to the point that the music almost seems to be an afterthought. It feels like artists would rather put more effort into turning the most heads rather than just making the best music. It feels like the music is no longer the talking point of these albums. Probably because in most cases, the music is less interesting than the gimmicks they're building the projects around. And that's where I begin questioning the motives of these albums. Are you making it to put out the best music you can, or are you just looking for attention? It feels like in 99% of cases, the music doesn't justify these eccentric, larger-than-life atmospheres always being built around every single album. Going back to the Christmas analogies, it feels like we're getting the same gift over and over, but they keep wrapping it in a bigger, stranger-shaped box as if that has any effect on the gift inside. If anything, it just makes it more underwhelming when it's wrapped in the shape of a hockey stick, only for it to wind up being another pair of socks. In recent memory, the only true exception that comes to mind would be Hardy's The Mockingbird and The Crow. That was a concept album that I think made a lot of sense based on where Hardy was at in his career, and I think the music successfully made just as much of a statement as the idea. That is an example of having something special musically and therefore marketing it as such. Like I said, there's no objectively correct stance on any of this, because from a business perspective, the music industry has never been more saturated, therefore you could easily argue it's crucial to make your album stand out by any means necessary. Therefore, this overdose of experimentation could be argued as a good thing. And a successful album probably looks very different to a marketer than it does to me. But for me, putting the music above the business side of things, the best way to pique my interest is just by making good music. So those are my thoughts on all the strange album structures we've seen, but why am I so specifically against these insanely long albums like One Thing at a Time? Why do I hope this trend dies down so fast, and why do I think it's such a blatant money grab? The answer is because there's no reason for this album to be as long as it is, other than the financial statistical benefits that come along with more content. If Morgan wanted to put out the best album he could, it would be 10 to 15 songs max. And I have no doubts there is a great album buried and scattered throughout this upcoming project. I really enjoy the bulk of Morgan's music and believe he deserves to be in the position he's in. But the goal of this album isn't to be the best, it's to be the biggest. This album is made for the purpose of breaking records and dominating charts, which in turn brings in the cash. If anything, it's just like the bully of country music. And I just don't like when music is rooted in financial goals rather than artistic goals. And a lot of you probably don't care and are of the opinion that the more music the merrier, whatever an artist is willing to throw at you, you'll gladly take in. And that's a very valid standpoint. I just personally disagree because I think there's something admirable and special about a cohesive, solid body of work. But arguably more annoying than simply being a money grab, I think it devalues records and chart statistics simply because it was designed to succeed in those avenues. This album is going to break all sorts of records simply by overwhelming the charts with sheer quantity, rather than sheer quality people return to enough that it sets a record. Of course, One Thing at a Time is going to shatter the record for most first-day streams on a country album. It's the length of 3 freaking albums. If you tripled everyone else's first-day streams, I'm sure that gap would close pretty quick. I'm not saying Morgan still wouldn't be on top, I'm just saying it wouldn't be this big uncontested runaway they want to market it as. If this album was truly a 36-song masterpiece with hit after hit, and the album truly wouldn't be complete without each individual moment, then the annihilating of these records and charts would be warranted. But that's not the case here, because nobody will ever make a 36-song album that doesn't drag or have an ungodly amount of filler. And the filler may not even be bad, especially in the case of Morgan. He's got a pretty good floor. Generally, his music is at a pretty good standard, but that doesn't make those filler songs necessary. They're still only there to pad out the tracklist. And again, just to make myself clear, I'm not trying to paint Morgan as some villain. He just so happens to be the most recent culprit. If someone like Luke Combs or Eric Church put out an album this long, I'd be saying the exact same thing. Now at this point you may be thinking, why do I even care if it's financially motivated? More money for the artist is a good thing. And yes, I agree. But if Morgan Wallen of all people chose to put out a 10-song album instead of 36, he would still be going back to a very warm home tonight. His bills would still be comfortably paid. Morgan isn't scraping by for cash, but if he is, those ticket prices will certainly help him out. At the end of the day, do you view music as an art or a business? What is the motivation for the creation? It's a tough line to draw because prioritizing one almost always comes at the expense of the other. Like I said in the beginning, there's no right answer. It simply boils down to which element of music you value more. Obviously, the other factor is that I'm not Morgan Wallen. I'm not an artist, so I can't apply my values to someone in a position I cannot relate to. But in my current position as a listener, I am simply after the best art. I want the best music an artist can put forward. Therefore, a 36-song juggernaut overflowing with filler songs isn't necessarily what I'm so desperately after. Because even if you take out all of my other problems with an album that big, it's simply not gonna wind up being the best album it could. Hopefully that came across as grounded and insightful. If it came across as vicious or bitter, I didn't intend it to be. If you still think I'm nothing more than a Morgan hater who only uses the internet to throw rocks at things that shine, you are now welcome to tell me in the comments below. Thank you for watching the entirety of this video. But also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this discussion in the comments below. I've already had some fantastic conversations with you guys on my Instagram, which you can follow at the Overshore. I'd love to have more great discussions down in the comments of this video. So if you have any thoughts or further questions, be sure to drop them down there. I'll try and get back to you as quick as possible. In the description, you can find links to my Instagram, Discord, podcast, and Patreon if you'd like to follow me or support me on any of those. If you enjoyed this video, a like really does help me out. And if you're new, maybe consider subscribing for some more country music content. And until next time, I hope you guys have a fantastic day.